Two words, people: torture and porn. And there's no sugarcoating this, but that is basically the summarization of the entire Saw franchise. Now let me make this very clear to a lot of Saw fans. I'm not a big fan of this franchise. In fact, I wouldn't even call myself a fan. I only like 2 of the movies, and that includes this movie and the first movie. Now, I've seen the other movies, and I'm not even a fan of this genre, because I do not like watching other people get tortured for an hour and a half. That's not how I consider entertainment. It's not my cup of cum. I'm not a big fan of it. I should have said tea. God, that sounded so freaking weird. But I do think, because of the first movie, which I did see prior to watching this one, I do think this franchise has potential of being decent. Now, I'm kind of going to do a mini review of the Saw movies that I've really watched the most of, and it really includes just 3 that I focused my time on. I only saw Saw X once, and I'm going to keep it that way until eventually, I get up the courage to watch it again, basically. So, like I said, prior to watching Saw X, I watched the first Saw, since it was on Amazon Prime, and I figured, why not? Because timeline-wise, Saw X is supposed to take place, it's set in between the events of the first and second film. So, I figured, why not? Let's just rewatch the first movie. And I'm going to be honest here. It is a good movie. I would say it's a pretty good movie that gets a bad rap. I get why critics hate it. I know why it's not everyone's favorite movie. I mean, it took a couple of viewings for me to even, appreciate what it did. Now, again, I'm not a big fan of the torture stuff, and, I do think a lot of the movie is sadistic, and that is really the extent of most of my criticisms for the movie, because the acting is great, the story is so there's another criticism. I mean, there isn't much to say about the original Saw movie besides the fact that I think it's an okay film. It's not the greatest film, it's not even a great horror film, but I do think it is pretty good considering that a lot of people hate it, particularly critics. And yeah, I did watch the other Saw movies, and yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, from what I can remember from my middle school childhood when I watched this with friends, they were pretty bad movies. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the torture porn genre to begin with, so watching these movies was not only traumatic, but I also thought they weren't well crafted. Regardless of the twists and turns, I just felt like the storyline was all over the place, and it's ridiculous, the fact that John Kramer just literally has all these traps even after his death. Spoiler if you really care about the Saw franchise. But it really boggles my mind the fact that there is so much happening in this franchise. And I just didn't care to go back to the other films because, like I said, it's not my cup of tea. I know they get more and more brutal as they go on. So, they're not great movies at all. So starting with the second one that I watched the most is the Chris Rock spinoff, Spiral. That came out not too long ago. I think it was 2021, but it was such a fever dream of a movie that I honestly forgot. That movie is also not good, but I do consider it better than the Saw sequels that I watched. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of it. I know a lot of people like it. I just felt like I was underwhelmed by it. And not only that, again, it took me a while to even appreciate what Saw and the Saw franchise was doing. So, again, I wasn't a big fan of the movie. And the twist, I'm just going to say it, normally from what I can remember, the twist, regardless of what the sequels are, they were shocking. They were twists. This one in Spiral wasn't a twist. It was such a lame, I'm just going to use air quotes here, twist that it didn't belong in the movie. I mean, it's clear from the get-go a lot of stuff was cut. And I kind of wish they extended it a little bit, but then again, that probably would have equaled more gore over story. And that's kind of what the Saw franchise basically is. It's all gore, no story. And, let's just say Chris Rock's acting in that movie wasn't the best. Now let's get into Saw X. This movie was surprisingly very great. Okay, maybe not great, but it was certainly good. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it was second best to the first movie. In fact, I might even say that this was probably the best Saw movie of the franchise. And I know since I haven't seen the other movies, it doesn't really, matter. But for me, it was a really well done film. The way they handled it. I mean, I like how it was more story based. You got more character depth. Now, I'm not going to be one of those geeks that are, all about the characters. Because, I literally watch the Transformer movies just for the action. And I still love them even to this day. I'll get to those movies eventually. But let me make it clear. The Saw franchise kind of needed some humanity added to it because it was a very depraved franchise. I mean, it needed some sort of not like hero to cheer for, but at least some sort of humanity, built within it. Now, granted, I feel like John Kramer is a monster that doesn't need sympathy with, but in this movie, it works for me. And I'll tell you why. Now, it's mainly focused on John Kramer. It's mainly focused on, obviously set between the first and second movie. It's during the time period where, he's trying to find a cure for cancer and he goes to Mexico and he gets scammed out of it. Now, I'm going to laugh about the reveal here, how John finds out. It's honestly kind of funny. But the way, spoiler alert, if you really want to see the movie, it's already been out for a month, so I don't see why you haven't already seen it. But anyway, regardless, the way John discovers it, basically they scam him out of his money by faking a procedure. Because I guess either they don't know how to do the procedure or they just, scam people because, they're scam artists. So, they don't need logic to this. But basically, they used a computer monitor or a TV monitor to trick John into thinking that that's the camera that was being translated. That was the surgery being done on his brain. It was essentially just a video of cancer getting removed as a tutorial. And that's how John figures it out, and the whole movie is basically a revenge story from there. And let me tell you, it kind of rocks. Because, throughout most of the first act until basically after that reveal, you just get this whole entire... And it is, I will give it credit, where I didn't feel like I was watching a Saw movie. I felt like I was watching a completely different film. I really loved what they did here, where they just gave John just this much needed backstory because, obviously his cancer comes into play into the sequels as they progress, and yes, he does ultimately pass away in the further sequels. Again, spoiler alert, but you know what? I don't care, and you've already made it this far, so I'm shocked that a lot of you haven't already figured out that this is spoiler territory. But anyway, it's really well done. Now, it's just... Again, it is a Saw movie, so you get those Saw tropes in there. The torture devices, the gore. But it's ultimately, the story that keeps it from absolutely kind of being a mediocre to average movie. And gotta give credit where credit is due. Not being there being a whole lot of traps in this movie, the traps are pretty good in this. They're, respectively gruesome, and for fans of the franchise, it will not disappoint. I mean, even for me, who did get squeamish and did kind of look away, yep, you can laugh at me, I did look away, I'm not ashamed to admit it, it did make me very uncomfortable, to say the least, but they were really well done. Now, just to wrap it all up into one neat little bow, in terms of the ending, for fans of the franchise, all I gotta say is, stick around, because a reoccurring character, who does show up in the latter sequels, especially in Saw 2, you will get a lot out of it, and it is kind of a big surprise that he does show up. Now, there is a twist ending in here, but I don't want to spoil it, and, I want to respect other people's interests, and if they are genuinely interested in seeing it, then I don't want to spoil it. So, it's a really well done movie. That's all I gotta say. In terms of a Saw movie, I really respect how different they made it, but still made it feel like a Saw movie, and even look like a Saw movie. Compared to Spiral, this was a breath of fresh air. It didn't feel as depraved as the others, but it also just, there are stuff that I didn't like. But like I said, I want to wrap this all up, and again, since I recently just finished the movie not too long ago, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on the movie. I didn't take notes during the movie. I just wanted to watch it, just for the sake of watching it, I didn't want to, watch it and take notes with a critical eye. I just kind of walked in going like, okay, I'm going to brave seeing a Saw movie. And you know what? It wasn't bad. Would I watch a Saw movie in theaters again? Probably not. That's about it. See ya. Actually, scratch that. Not even probably not. I will not see another Saw movie in theaters because, like I said, they're very depraved and disturbing.